Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast, where we're helping people improve their quality of life through nutrition and fitness. And now, your hosts, nutrition and wellness coaches, international speakers, Adam and Shoshana Chaim.
Hey, I'm Adam Chaim.
And I'm Shoshana Chaim, and we are Propelled by Plants.
Today we bring to you episode 288, Rethinking Our Mental Health.
In this episode of the Plant Trainers Podcast, we're talking about mental health, something that we've done before, especially back in 2015 when we put out our first episode about mental health. And that's when I gave a fairly detailed description of my experience with mental illness up until then. But since then, we discovered that I had PTSD. We discovered that there are relapses that can happen, and I'm thriving now even better than I had been before. So we wanted to give you an update, but also give you actionable tips of what you can do in your life for your own mental health.
Yeah, and I think that we really did share some good tips and 3 specific tools that you use and 3 specific tools that I use for people that either suffer themselves with mental health or know someone else. They could really use those tools immediately. So listen up to the rest of the show and you'll get those tools to share with your friends and loved ones. And you can also check out the show notes for this episode at planttrainers.com/288.
Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook or Instagram. You could just search Plant Trainers and you'll find us there, because there are lots of conversations happening around our posts that have to do with these podcasts specifically, and we don't want you to miss out on that.
Hope you enjoy the show.
The Plant Trainers Podcast is free, and it will always be free. And we are so delighted to bring it to you every single week. But there's costs associated with it. For example, we have hosting fees and our time. How many hours a week do you think you put into this podcast?
I don't know, 3, 5,
So you
6,
edit it, you
depends.
make images to go with it. There's lots of things that you put out there. I'm reaching out to people all the time, making sure that they're committed, making sure that the show notes are ready, making sure we have questions ready. Probably 10 to 15 hours a week or per show that go into creating this podcast for you. So if we were in person, I guess we'd say right now we're holding out our tip jar. And if you look on internet, you could find some really cool little tip jars like tips. They're like hugs without the awkward body contact. Or tips. Tip me, please, so I could send my cat to Buddha school or ninja school. All these cute little things. But Patreon takes that away. Basically, what Patreon is a way for you to leave a little tip saying, hey, thanks for the amazing job you're doing. Help us cover some of those costs that come along with a podcast. And you can help tip us by going to
patreon.com/planttrainers.
And we really do appreciate everyone who has done that before. And there's some perks that go with it. So make sure you check it out.
And now for a moment of gratitude.
I'm grateful for every morning being able to wake up and put my 2 feet on the floor.
Why?
Because I'm able to do it. There are other people who aren't able to do it. There have been days where I haven't been able to do it or haven't wanted to do it, whether it's from a physical point of view or a mental point of view. Sometimes that's just difficult, but when you achieve something early in the morning and you get past that, you have everything else to look forward to.
I'm grateful for the fact that it's so freezing outside. The temperatures have dropped. There's snow everywhere. Yet I'm able to hang out in my family room with the fireplace on with my family to just hang out and stay warm. So I'm grateful for that.
I never ever thought that I'd hear you be grateful for the cold outside. You hate the cold outside.
I'm grateful for being able to stay warm.
Good. So today we're talking about mental health. And as we said in the introduction, we're going to cover a couple of different things. And before we begin, we wanted to just let you know what Bell Let's Talk Day is, because it's something that comes up in Canada here every year. This year it happens to be on January 30th. And it's an opportunity for people to talk about mental health. And they encourage us to do that. Bell is our telephone and internet and wireless providers around here, one of the companies.
Yeah, and so what they do is for everybody that sends a text message during that day on January 30th, they will donate a certain amount of money. I think it's 5 cents per text.
And there's a hashtag that goes along with it, of course. So there's lots of promotion on social to encourage people to be doing this, to put the hashtag, to talk about mental health. And we normally put out a mental health episode at this time of year. And like I've said on other podcasts, we need to organize how we get this information out to you. But it's really important to be talking about mental health, not just, at the end of January, beginning of February, when we've had the Bell Let's Talk Day here in Canada or wherever there's a big mental health event where you live. But it's important to be talking about these things all the time, because it's really easy for people to say, hey, I have a doctor's appointment, I'm going to my physical, I have a dentist appointment, and just, get up and leave work. But when you say, hey, I have a shrink appointment, or let's be nicer about that. Hey,
or even if you say I'm struggling with some kind of mental issue, people kind of get their backs up and get uncomfortable. And it's very awkward for some people, and it really shouldn't be. This is a time where we should be able to talk to anybody about anything, and all of us suffer or struggle with some form of mental health or mental illness at some point in our lives. And having the opportunity or the comfort level to just speak about it should be okay. It shouldn't be something that we are uncomfortable with.
And there's such a big link between our mental health and our physical health. And of course, on other podcasts, we've spoken with doctors about the gut and how the gut can affect your mental health. So with Dr. Linda
Plowright, but that wasn't about gut.
No, but Dr. Linda Plowright, we talked about, how you feed your body and how that could affect your mental health. And with Dr. Chitty Parikh, we talked about our gut microbiome, and we talked about our mental health in there also. But then we also have to look at how our mental health actually plays a big role in how our body is performing. And if our mind isn't doing well, our immune system is down, our stress levels are up, we have more inflammation happening in the body. Anybody who has illnesses already in the body seem to get inflamed when they are stressed and not doing well. So whether it's mental health or mental illness, we need to know that we could take care of ourselves. And to take a mental health day from work, I mean, like, if you're stressed because you're going on vacation and you haven't packed, like, maybe that's not a good enough reason to take a day off work. But if that stress is going to snowball into something bigger, if that stress is keeping you from being able to eat or being able to breathe properly or be able to talk properly, then a mental health day is really nothing to be embarrassed about or feel bad about taking.
So mental health has impacted our family, and we talked about this early on in our podcast career. In episode 6, we shared your struggles with mental illness, and I guess we're using this episode to kind of recap the last 4 years and kind of see what your progression has been and how we continue to help other people.
So I remember recording that episode. It was only our 6th episode. You didn't know me that well, listeners, and I didn't know you that well. Not that I necessarily know all of you that well now, but so many of you have reached out since from different episodes. But I remember sitting on the floor in a hotel room in New Jersey because we were there for my cousin's wedding and just spilling everything and putting it all out there. And it wasn't so hard to talk about at that time. What was really hard was the release day and knowing how many people were going to be listening to that. But basically, you can go back to the Plant Trainers podcast, episode number 6. So you could go to planttrainers.com/006 and you could have a listen there or on Apple Podcasts where you want to. But basically, I gave the details of, having postpartum depression and having some really big depressive and anxiety coming out of Adam's story and, being pregnant with our second child, thinking I was going to lose my husband, that he wasn't even going to be at the birth. And all of that created this anxiety and depression and worries and feelings that I was not able to control, irrationalities that I couldn't talk myself out of. And it really messed with my life. It wasn't just there that I was worried. I used to have to go right upstairs after work. I couldn't interact with the kids, couldn't stop crying, needed to go on medication. So we talked a lot about that story. And I
remember now that you say that, it was a very tough time. I was coming home and you would be upstairs in bed under the sheets. And I was like, okay, now what? I got to take care of 2 kids and do all these things. And you were just not present. You were in a very dark place that thankfully we got through. But I remember that time being very tough, and there's probably a lot of people out there going through tough times similar or their own version of it, that they need to remember that there is a way out. There is a way to get help. And even if just listening to this show and getting a few tips that might put you on the right path, there's always someone there to help you. So there is hope for whoever's listening out there that needs some help.
There is. And as much as we talk about doctors and medication on this show, we do know that there is definitely a place for doctors, that there's definitely a place for medication. And I think that I was in a place then where I needed medication because I didn't have enough of the tools that I needed to be able to thrive without it. So at that time in 2015, I was weaning off of medication. I believe that I said that I was on 10 milligrams of Cipralex at the time, and I continued to wean off, and I had a pretty good year after that. But then I did have a relapse. So in 2016, I was at a point where I wasn't washing my hair. I wasn't showering. I was wearing the same clothes for days. I was anxious about a lot of different things, and a lot of those old emotions starting to come up. But it wasn't depression anymore. I didn't have that crying all the time. I didn't have those worries about, Adam's past so much. It was more anxiety driven. So I had another session with my NLP specialist, who is Brad, who we actually had on the show talking about NLP for sports and endurance. And we will link to that in the show notes at planttrainers.com/288. And basically, I had gotten to a point where I was really not doing well again. And I put myself back on medication on the same day that I had seen Brad. And I knew and trusted and had all faith that the session that I had with Brad was enough, that I didn't need medication, and was actually enough to change my life for good, for the future. But I still had that fear of, what if I'm wrong? So I did go on the medication. And when I woke up the next morning, it was like 70 to 80% gone. All those fears, all those anxiety, everything was almost gone. And that doesn't happen by taking one dose of Cipralex when you've been off for over a year. So I knew then that, our session together had worked, had been really good. So I stayed on the medication just a little while to make sure. And I came right off right away. And what we did is we really looked out for my behaviors, my reactions, and really kept a good eye out to see how was I doing. What were you like at that time? Like if you would wake up in the morning and be like, wow, she's lost so much of her crazy, were you scared that it would come back?
Always. I mean, you never know when it's going to come back. I didn't really know what would trigger you or not, but I was also focused on my own stuff at that time. I was doing the Ironman training. I was getting up super early. So a lot of it was hard for me to really notice because I was so focused on my training, which is, I guess, not a great thing. But I did notice change, obviously, because you were definitely more around at that time. And there was always the concern, where is it going to come back? But then there was a certain point where, well, this is the new you, and this is going to be great, and we're just going to move forward and not look back and keep things positive.
Now, I also want to say that I do have my days. And I think we all do. We all do. But like, I'll have my days where I'll be like, oh, what if this and what if that and what if, and he'll be like, shush, calm down.
Yeah.
It's today.
Focus.
It's today. So I think that we all have good and bad days. But I think when you've experienced PTSD, when you've experienced, depressive events and crazy anxiety events, it might be a little bit bigger for those people. But, I definitely do have bad days, but I have tools, and I have tools that I can use. But then something else came up, because a little while later, I got exhausted. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't anxiety. I was just exhausted. I wanted to nap all day. I wanted to sleep. If the children would make loud noise in a game that they were playing, or laughing even, not even like bad noises, I would react to it. And I realized that I had a cortisol issue happening, and my adrenals weren't functioning very well. And I think that a lot of that had stemmed from all that anxiety that I felt before. My body was just in overdrive, and I was just this entrepreneur mom who was exhausted.
Because you were trying to compensate for what you had done in the past, and all that time that you missed, you were trying to make up. So you were trying to work double time. And it's just another reminder that we don't need to always look behind us, and we got to stop, look where we are, and see where we want to go and move forward to that spot.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember being in Florida 2 years ago, and we were with my grandmother, who we talk about a lot. So now she's 96. So at the time, I guess she was 94, 93. And I remember trying to convince her and Adam to drop her off at the front door of the apartment building instead of parking like, I don't know what, 30 feet away. And because I felt like I couldn't walk. That's how exhausted I was. I was using my grandmother, as an excuse to not have to walk from the parking lot to the apartment building instead of right up. So, I was pretty exhausted. So again, I used my tools that I'd learned from Brad. I started communicating about my stress more and asking for help. And I had been going to a Chinese medicine doctor and didn't really feel like it was making as much progress as possible. And then I found a great supplement, a redox supplement that I began taking, and that changed everything for me. And I was able to manage my stress a lot better. My energy levels were higher 3 weeks later, and I was just me again. I was working out again. I was lifting heavier weights. I was running faster. Everything really just went a lot better.
Yeah, that supplement made a huge difference for you and has really helped you progress and move forward. And you got to keep doing that.
And part of the reason why I need to keep doing that is because I have an understanding that in our brain, we need to have, there needs to be communication between the cells. There's neurotransmitters. And what I've learned is that there's oxidization that happens often in the brain, and that's keeping people from being able to have less anxiety or not have those depressive thoughts. And when I raised my redox molecules, not only did that help fight against the free radicals and the oxidative stress in my brain, but it also helped to create more connection and more neurotransmitters able to work properly, and everything just kind of seems in balance. I get a lot of clients that come to me and say, I want to eat better because my immune system is low and I'm just so tired all the time. And they don't even have the energy to make a salad or to go for a walk. So when we combine, some of the tools that I used, like some of the NLP tools or some of the tapping tools or the supplement or all of it together, they're able to make better changes. They last longer and they feel the difference because it's real. And I think that I've tried so many things over the years. Some have worked and some haven't. And, it's funny how the universe brings you things. So lately I've just been, a lot of my clients who are coming to me for lifestyle and nutrition and fitness, they're also coming to me with a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of lethargy because I think they hear me talking about it. And whether those tools worked for me or not, they're still tools that I can help pass on to them.
And the funny thing is, it's helping them. So you're able to help those people now because of the experience that you've gone through and because of the tool belt that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, so whether they're on antipsychotics or whether they're on antidepressants or they're not on anything yet and they'd like to avoid it, or they can't go to the grocery store without, having a panic attack, or they're so upset about how their health has become, so depleted, and it just gives them so much anxiety about the future. These are things I'm helping people get past where their own psychiatrists and therapists haven't been able to do it for years.
But let's be clear, you're not a doctor. We're not
right.
doctors, and we're not telling people to stop taking their medication and avoid doing that.
No, and I don't take people off of their medication, and I don't come off of my own medications alone. But the idea is that if something is not working for you, you need to
rethink it.
You need to rethink it, and you need to research yourself, and you need to be your own advocate. And I think that's what I've really, really learned. Back in episode number 6, we brought up some points, and I said, doctors, talk to them. Like it's important. And although it is important, a doctor might tell you, okay, go home and sit over if you have a sinus infection, they might say, go home and sit over a big pot of water and put a towel over your head and breathe in. And, how many people, when they're told that by their doctor, actually go home and do that? So what I'm saying is, when a doctor gives you information, don't just follow blindly. Look into it. Make sure that it's the best thing for you, and always think, what else can I add? We need to combine conventional medicine with
more lifestyle medicine.
Yeah.
More things that are going to actually make a difference. I mean, not that what the doctors tell you won't make a difference, but we need to figure out things that work for you specifically, because everybody's so different and has a different lifestyle. They need to find those little tips and tricks that are going to help them in conjunction with what the doctor's saying.
And last time I also talked about gluten. So I listened back to that episode and I kept saying I came off gluten because I wanted to see, is it going to lift my brain fog? Is it going to give me more clarity? And in hindsight, I really don't feel like that made a big difference for me. I don't think that I have a gluten intolerance. I think that I know that when I eat well, that when I'm not eating processed foods, processed sugar, when, I'm not going to restaurants and eating food that has so much salt in it, or a microwave burrito or what have you, I know that I feel better. And I think that when I first took out gluten, it reduced what I can eat. So if I went to a restaurant or I went to somebody's house or I went to a party, there were less things that I was able to eat. But those things that I wasn't able to eat were things that I shouldn't have been eating anyway. So I don't think it was a gluten issue. I think it was a processed food issue, and taking out more processed foods helped because I didn't really replace it. I didn't replace Oreo cookies with gluten-free vegan Oreo cookies. I didn't replace cake with gluten-free cake, or I didn't only eat gluten-free chips. You know what I mean? I ate better overall, and I think that made the biggest difference because I have put gluten back into my diet. It's mostly sprouted grain bread, or, if we're out with the kids at a bakery, I'll have a cupcake or something like that, and I won't have a gluten-free one. But I don't find that on the days I eat gluten that I have any difference in my gut health or mental health.
Funny enough, when I have gluten, I do find that I do get a little more inflamed. You could see me swell in the face a little bit. But that's a whole other conversation and a different podcast.
It is a whole other conversation. We also said that the stats were 1 in 5 here in Canada of people who are affected by mental health. And, in the last 4 years, that really hasn't seemed to change. And I don't know if that's surprising, and I'm not sure which direction I was expecting it to move in. So I'm not sure if I was expecting that number to become more prevalent.
Well, I think the numbers have changed slightly because in some places you'll see it's 1 out of 5. Sometimes you'll see it's 1 out of 4. Right. So it is a little bit more prevalent, more common, but that could also be because people are hiding it a little bit less and talking about it a little bit more. So we're learning that there are more people that are dealing with it.
Right. Or are there less people with it, but more people talking about it? Right. Because lifestyle medicine has become so big. So, with us and so many other practitioners out there, we're not just concentrating on diet and exercise. We're concentrating on community and hobbies and, lifestyle, our mental health, our stress techniques, supplementation, what have you. We're concentrating on all these different things. And are we giving people enough tools before some of these mental health issues come on? And I really hope the answer is yes, but I'm not so sure.
Not so sure. There's so much more great information coming your way. But before we get to that, we wanted to share with you and let you know about probiotics. We've talked about prebiotics and probiotics before on various episodes with amazing guests. And we talked about how important it is to feed your good gut bacteria and help it grow. If we simplified things, there are 2 categories of bacteria in the gut, different types of bad bacteria that keeps your body from running as smoothly as it should, and different types of good bacteria. A good gut is a happy gut, is a happy brain, is a happy body. Sometimes we need to help our good bacteria grow.
Recently, and tell me if this is TMI, I had parasites. So as you can imagine, I spent most of the summer quite uncomfortable. I tried 3 probiotics that were supposed to be the best of the best, but they didn't help. They each had very large doses of only 1 strand, but our gut needs many different good bacteria to grow. In September, I came across a full-spectrum probiotic called Via Biome that has 16 different strands of probiotics chosen for their positive effects on the digestive system and throughout the body. It also had 3 prebiotics, which makes for an environment that healthy, friendly flora can thrive, and phytonutrients like slippery elm that's been used for thousands of years to support the digestive system.
Many people have unbalanced microbiomes and don't even know it. This can cause health concerns that seem unrelated. Well, I kid you not, within 48 hours of trying Biome, I was a lot more comfortable in too many ways to talk about right here.
We have a link to the information about Via Biome and its amazing qualities in the show notes and at planttrainers.com/shop. Please check it out there and click on the link to book a call with Shoshana so that she can make sure that it's the right product for you and help you get your hands on some. And now back to the show.
We have CAMH here in Toronto, and CAMH is a mental health hospital. It's quite well known across the world, and they summarized some research, and what it said is that in 2008, only 50% of Canadians would tell friends or coworkers that they or a family member was suffering from mental illness, and in 2015, that number jumped to 57%. And you might say that that's not such a huge jump, but I think that 7% really does show that there's a difference in stigma that's happening now and that people are able to talk about their mental health. And I can't tell you, and it makes me cry every time, and it's kind of giving me the goosebumps now. I can't tell you how many times people have reached out to say, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for talking about it. And I really don't do it for the thank yous at all. In fact, sometimes it's hard to hear those thank yous, but the fact that people know that they're not alone, the fact that I'm saying it out loud, the fact that I was in a workplace where I was told by a colleague to never talk about my mental health issues because if the administration had heard about it, then I would most probably be terminated. They would find another reason to terminate me because it was seen as a sign of weakness. To be in those kinds of situations is really uncomfortable. That made me not even want to work there. You want to be supported. And I mean, you can't go crying to everybody every time, like you step in a puddle, but mental health is so much different than that. There's a difference between being a complainer or being a negative Nancy and actually suffering with mental health issues or thriving with mental health issues. So I really do hope that that number continues to grow in terms of the stigma. Talked about my support system also in that episode. And now my support system is, of course, Adam. I have two friends in particular that I talk to. I have an aunt and my parents. And of course, Brad, my NLP specialist, is somebody who I rely on as well. And at the time I had a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychologist, not even sure which one, because I'd gone through a whole bunch of them. And I really felt like it was good as an outlet to kind of complain to and say, this is how I feel, or this is what happened and it made me feel this way. But I don't feel like I got so many tools on how to deal with it going forward. So it was great to get those complaints off my plate so I didn't bring them home to Adam or those friends all the time. That was the best part.
You didn't have to continue to complain to me or make me feel guilty about certain things, even though it wasn't me who had that issue. Although me feeling guilty is my own problem. You putting that on me was just something that wasn't necessary and brought a little more difficulty into the home. So having that person to go talk to outside of the house really took some of that off of me. So it was helpful in that way.
So I didn't even realize that. I mean, I thought that I was trying to achieve that, but I didn't realize that that was something that you had felt also. And I think that since that episode, I think we kind of sat down one day, and I know that we sat down one day and I filled in some of the blanks. I filled in some of the gaps, some extra emotions that I'd been feeling or thoughts or...
Well, that's because you stopped the medication, right? And one of the things the medication did was it suppressed a lot of those feelings and thoughts and didn't allow you to actually be yourself.
Right. But then at one point I just got comfortable enough to say, I'm past this and, I'm past this and I own it. And I needed to be 100% honest with you and let you know to what extent everything that I was feeling and doing really was, because having it inside of me was kind of eating me up way too much. One thing that I'm not sure that I touched on in that last episode was how difficult it was to find support. So yes, I have Adam and friends and, Brad, but in terms of, in terms of how I got those therapists or psychiatrists where I didn't have to pay for it out of pocket, that it was covered by insurance, or free help from programs that were covered by the government or subsidized, I remember spending days just trying to find a helpline that I could call if I didn't have an appointment that day and I couldn't reach my mother and I didn't want to bother Adam. It was so hard to find those free services. And I'm just so upset today that it was so difficult for me because it was so hard to look for help in the first place from a point of view of, getting over the fact that I needed the help. And then I was so exhausted and tired and anxiety driven that it was so hard to actually pick up the phone and dial the numbers. I'm really surprised that it was that hard. And I really do hope that it's not that hard today for people 4 years later to be able to find that support.
Is there something people could do to make it easier? Or is there a way for people to find easier access?
I think that if you were to Google free mental health support in my community and for that to come up right at the top, then that would be the best, because when you're in that position that you're actually looking for it, it's really hard to sort through all that other information. Or when you do call a hospital in your area, that they have those resources with the person who answers the phone so that they can get it to you. I think that is really important.
So can we take a few minutes now to leave people with some strategies that may have worked for you or may have worked for me that they could actually implement to help themselves pretty quickly rather than having to wait for an appointment with a doctor or someone to reach out to, something that they could do that's hands-on?
Sure. So the 3 things that I do most often now is, number 1, evaluate my situation. I check in with myself. I say, where am I? Which road am I going down? Am I going down the road of self-help and I'm doing great and I can deal with all of this? Or am I going down the road of that cyclone that kind of spins me out of control, and to see what steps I need to take next? So I check in with myself a lot. And that might not sound so practical, but when you feel like you're in a good place, checking in to make sure that you're in that good place is just as good as it was a month ago can really help you avoid some of these situations moving forward. I use a really specific type of tapping, something that Brad taught me, but then I kind of put a spin on it myself. And that really helps as well. And sometimes I just need to get out. Sometimes I need to go in my room and close my door. Sometimes I need to get in the car and go shopping for something that I don't even need. And I don't say that I need to spend money to feel better. Maybe I don't even spend money. Maybe I just walk around a store or go do an errand that's been on the list that's not important, but it's been on the list for the last 3 months, and just get it out of the way, and then come back and walk through that door and take that right foot and step right back into the house and start off on a new foot and kind of leave everything else outside. Why you because I did that yesterday?
No, those are 3 good quality things that people could actually use and do. So I think that's pretty helpful. For me, I start every day doing some type of meditation, usually breathing and focusing on my breath and grounding myself and getting myself prepared for the day. And then later on in the day, if I feel something getting under my skin, I go back to my breath and remember the meditation that I did in the morning to try to calm myself and prepare myself to move forward in a less, I want to say anxious way, but it's not always anxiety, but in a less harsh way, or in a way that's
a more calm demeanor.
I guess more calm. I try. It doesn't always work, but it's something that has helped quite often. Another thing that I use, obviously, is my exercise and my training, and going for a run or a bike or a swim or a weight training workout, just to blow off steam, but also to get the blood circulating and the mind clearing out. And having that time with myself to do my fitness really puts myself in a much better mood and a much more enjoyable personal environment, at least. And the other thing that I did is I learned how to use an anchor. And when I spent some time with Brad, who we've spoken about a little bit today, and we'll put his show in the show notes again, he gave me an anchor on one of my knuckles that I would press whenever I need. And what it does is it triggers a memory And it allows me to visualize an image of a place or a thing or an experience that I went through that was a very positive one that changes my mood almost instantly. And I have a few of those anchors in different places for different reasons, but that is a technique that has certainly helped me in a lot of ways.
So if you want to learn more about mental health, then we really recommend that you go to either planttrainers.com or wherever it is that you listen to the Plant Trainers podcast, and you check out number 248, The Impact of Nutrition on Mental Health with Dr. Linda Plowright, Your Gut Microbiome and Health with Dr. Chitty Parikh, which is number 204, Music Therapy for Your Health with Haley Reese, number 181, Searching for Sarah with John Rathwell and Tracy Gunnard, number 203, and Deep Dark Depression and Eating for Eternity with Jason Rebel, number 137.
And of course, you can go to episode 101 and 103, where we talked about hypnotherapy as it relates to sports and athletics, but a lot of the tips and techniques that Brad spoke about in those episodes were very helpful, not just to athletes, so you could use them as well.
And of course, you should go to planttrainers.com/288 if you can't remember any of those podcasts we just mentioned, because they will all be listed there in the show notes. And of course, if you need to, feel free to reach out to info@planttrainers.com if you feel that our stories have helped you to realize that you'd like to make some changes. And if you think that you'd like us to help you with that, we can see if that can work.
And if you know anybody, or if you yourself suffer or are challenged by mental health or mental illness, know that you're not alone. Know that it's okay to speak about it. And don't be afraid to reach out for support wherever you can get it. And remember that Shosh and I are both here to support you in anything we can help you with.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Plant Trainers podcast. We want to make sure that you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform.
We really appreciate the feedback we receive from you every time we get a 5-star rating or review on iTunes from one of our fans. It really helps other people find us just like you did.
Thanks so much to our patrons. To become a patron, visit us at patreon.com/planttrainers. Even supporting us with $1 really makes a difference in the quality of the show.
And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is @PlantTrainers. Like Plant Trainers on Facebook, join our newsletter, and check out our website at planttrainers.com for awesome recipes, a list of our services, and of course, our latest podcast.
We encourage you to email your questions to info@planttrainers.com so that we can help you improve your quality of life through nutrition and fitness.
So we hope we've inspired you today. Join us again next time and have a healthy day. Or is that too corny?
It's a little cheesy.